Thank you very, very much for your words. The debate on gender inequality is one more example that it's not wise to say something like, your side of the boat is sinking, be aware. Pandemic just stressed how we are indeed interconnected with each other. And this presentation, these words, are the kickoff for the debate that will now take place on women in justice and justice for women. The host is the woman you are watching sitting just beside me, Anabela Pedroso, Secretary of State for Justice in Portugal.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to all participants to this last moment of our conference today about people-centered justice. And really, what a way to finish it. For the next 30 minutes, more or less, we'll be with 4 women that are world references when we speak about people-centered justice. The first one you heard about. It was Allyson Maynard-Gibson, that a warm welcome after her inspirational speech. Second, with me here, fortunately we have something that we can touch today, that is Marta Santos Pais, former United Nations Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children. Nathalie Drouin, Deputy Minister of Justice and Deputy Attorney General in Canada. Welcome, Nathalie. And last but not least, naturally, Tørres, Director of the Pathfinders for Peaceful, Just and Inclusive Societies. As Allyson emphasized, we have several dimensions to address in this, I can say, call to action about women and about justice. And that demands a holistic approach, but also we see a sea of opportunities for innovative ways to bring legal empowerment and social achievements for women and girls. And for that, we need pragmatic approaches. And I can speak perhaps some ones that earlier we were speaking about with Marta. For instance, about knowledge, when we speak about data, information, research, solutions, because we need good practices and we need even good role models that we can find and we can follow. But third, we need something that is so important, something that naturally we will speak a lot, coalitions and alliances with all stakeholders. We need governments, we need the civil society, we need all of us as citizens of the world. But the question and the issue is always to bring awareness and raise awareness and strengthening the power and empowerment of women and girls. And so I have 2 blocks of questions. The first one for our panel concerns 2 areas. One that we spoke a lot during this day, measurement. And about that, the lack of sound information about gender injustice doesn't mean that we can't use and achieve results building upon what we can say, what already exists. And so the question that I have for you is, what does data show today? And what can be anticipated with it? And secondly, to all of you again, I think that, again, what Allyson said, something that works, something that pragmatic works. So all over the world, we have good examples. We can share innovative ways and positive results of what human can achieve. And so all I ask to you is, what are those examples? What you can share in this moment? And in the third moment after that, perhaps we will return to look a little to the future. But let me start perhaps with Marta. Marta, what do you think about those 2 questions, data and about good examples?
Thank you. It's wonderful to be connected across the world with very good friends and to have this very important discussion here. Well, you said it's so important to mention the lack of data, but perhaps I would like to start just a step before to recognize that what we are discussing here, in fact, has been recognized as such an important commitment by states all over the world, and now it constitutes a very specific goal in the Sustainable Development Agenda. Access to justice must be meaningful for everyone, and of course for women. And I would like to say for girls, because things start very early in life. And I would like to emphasize particularly the many challenges that girls are confronted with throughout their lives. And the first thing that we note, as you said, is that we have weak data in the justice area, and most of the data is not disaggregated by age and by gender. And in fact, we also need to recognize that there are many children and many girls who are missing in the data that we have. It would be sufficient to think about situations where there is female infanticide. Girls are certainly not reflected in the data. They are not reflected in the planning or in the policies adopted by states. But in addition, what the data shows, as you say, is that girls are at a double disadvantage. On the one hand, they are too young and very often not taken seriously. And secondly, their gender, in fact, affects them dramatically in a very negative way. And I would like to give a few examples. Even in very well-developed countries with very good data, we see that girls are highly represented in status offenses. Status offenses that may mean that they were going to be punished because they have skipped school, because they have run away from a violent home, or because they have violated a curfew, a local curfew, a national curfew. And in fact, in some countries, we see a huge increase in the number of girls who are being punished for just escaping their violent home or a violent or a curfew in their cities. But in addition, of course, girls suffer very often when we deal with moral crimes. When girls are so often criminalized and punished because they have run away from an enforced marriage. They are punished because they have sexual relations with a man outside of a marriage situation. And in addition, as we have heard already from Allyson, of course, the law very often stigmatizes very negatively the situation of girls. And I think there again, if we think about countries where the minimum age of criminal responsibility is defined by the attainment of puberty, we know that for girls this means a very young age, which may be 9 years of age or even earlier moment. So data shows that girls are confronted with challenges at all stages of the justice system. And I would like to emphasize two of them. First of all, the access to justice itself. When a girl comes to tell that she was victim of a sexual abuse situation, she's very often dismissed, she's not believed, she is blamed for what has happened, and in fact, she feels extremely hesitant about telling the whole story. She may suffer with it, the stigma in the country, the stigma in the community and in the family. In some cases, girls risk the reprisals of their own family. They may be suffering very tough sanctions. I wanted just to recall two cases that happened just last week in two South Asian countries. In one of them, a girl who was accused of having an affair with a man was lashed in a public gathering to show that that was a bad example not to be replicated. And in another country, a 12-year-old girl was burned alive because she had, again, had sexual relations outside of a marriage situation. Of course, she was too early to be married at that time. But the system, the justice system itself, very often re-victimizes the girls who come before it. And it may, for instance, force the girl to go through virginity testing. It may force the girl to go through very invasive body searches. And the examples, of course, are much more than that. But if we think about what happens if a girl gets deprived of liberty, because girls are a minority, we believe between 5 and 10%, in fact, around the world. We know that most of the countries don't have tailor programs to rehabilitate those girls, vocational training tailored for girls. And very often the girl, because it's such a limited number, is placed very far away from home, so visits by the family don't happen. And in addition, very often the girl is placed with boys or without adult women or adult men being at high risk of sexual abuse. So the situations are quite dramatic. But as you said, I think we need to feel inspired by the role models, by the positive examples, and there are many, of course, that we should capitalize upon. I would like to start again, examples with girls. And we see how they are so strongly mobilized to prevent forced marriage, early marriage, child marriage in their communities, even using digital tools, you know, so a smartphone or SMS system, so that any girl who is at risk of being forced to get married may seek help immediately. There is a reporting system, and people know what are the strict areas, the rural areas where the incidence is higher, so that the prevention can function positively. But I want to give an adult woman example also in Tanzania, for example. Tanzania had conducted a very important study on violence against children. And gender violence came out as being a very important concern for the country. In fact, many girls were suffering situations of sexual violence in the home, in the schools, and elsewhere. And another finding from the study was that most of the time, the victims would not tell their stories before an authority, and if they did, the authority would not investigate, and there would be no prosecution, and the impunity would prevail. And so what did the Inspector General of the police, a wonderful, inspiring woman, decide to do? She decided to train all those who were working in the police force to create women and children desks where the victims could come and tell their stories. And as a result, in less than a year, she had covered with these desks more than 65% of the whole country. And in addition, people felt so encouraged to tell their stories that the complaints just increased exponentially. So good examples exist, and we can absolutely build upon them.
Thank you very much, Marta. We could stay here all night long, but let me go to Canada. Nathalie, can I start with you and kindly ask to all of you that after speaking, can you mute your mic, please? So, Nathalie, what do you think about what we were speaking about, what data shows today, and what kind of innovative ways or whatsoever we can use to improve and to empower the needs of women and girls?
Thank you, and thank you. I really appreciate being with you today. And I just want to acknowledge that I'm joining you from my home office, who is located on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people in Canada. Marta and Allyson, I think, you know, we can stop the presentation this morning with what you've said. I can echo 100% of all your words, and I support all your thinking. Let me start a little bit about, you know, what it means when we say access to justice, because I know that we come from different legal environment. We have also different languages, so maybe it doesn't resonate the same for all of us when we talk about access to justice. So yes, it's true that access to justice, you know, comes to the rule of law, but many things flow from that. And it really means enabling population and women in Canada in particular to obtain the information and assistance they need to help them prevent legal issues and also to resolve such issues in an efficiency, affordability, and fairly manner. So bringing justice closer also to people means that we understand their needs, and we meet them where they go seek assistance. And the pandemic has focused a spotlight on technology and virtual tools as a way to enhance also access to justice. A justice system that is aligned with the needs of individuals and communities must be prepared to innovate. And I will come to that probably at the end of this conversation earlier today. And we should be able to capitalize on the opportunity to design justice services that really responds to the needs. And it means that we will have to be prepared to let go some traditional way of doing things, and that we need to be open to new ways of doing things. It means also that we have to listen and involve the one who are seeking legal support and legal advice to make sure that we will redesign a justice system that reflect them. I do believe that access to justice is a powerful level to achieve equality and also to empower women and girls. It plays an important role in addressing the underlying drivers and inequalities, such as systemic and structural discrimination, racism, and exclusion. If I dream a little bit and try to imagine alternative vision for justice, as I said, it has to be people-focused. We need a system that places greater emphasis on understanding and responding to the needs of the people it serves, a system that accepts greater transparency, one in which decisions are evidence-based, decisions that are informed by data collection and researchers, a system that reflects the population they serve. So it means that, for example, people and other groups have to be active participants in the justice system. Unfortunately, the justice gap has become more evident over the last year and is both a reflection and also a contribution to longstanding equality. If I give you a couple of data in Canada, so women's jobs were more affected early in the pandemic than men's job. And the reason are that women are more present when it comes to the service and caring industries. So it's very difficult for women to work remotely in those industries. Even in Canada, women are still more responsible when it comes to family care type of responsibilities. So with daycares and schools closed, many mothers were much more affected than men. In fact, data shows that women were lost more their job than young men. They had to reduce also their hours to take care of their families. So the data, really to be specific, is that the lockdown of last year created 2.8 million women jobs lost in Canada. So this is a pretty high number. And maybe other evidence, early in the pandemic, 1 in 10 women reported being very or extremely concerned about the possibility of violence at home. So they were asking for more services to help them facing that very anxious moment. And of course, you know, losing a job, being afraid of your own security, that brings also a lot of mental health issues. You know, in Canada, we do collect a lot of information about women, but what we don't have is, you know, how to couple data when it comes to gender and also other realities like ethnicity, indigenous identity, disability, and other characteristics. So we really need to have more disaggregated data to understand the needs and the patterns. The good news is that at the last budget, the Canadian government has really recognized that gap and that need. So the federal government has decided last week that they will increase funding when it comes to collecting disaggregated data. So we will put in place an action plan in order to do that. We have also a couple of initiatives that aim to collect what we refer to people-focused data to better understand the nature of the problem people face. In terms of role model and things that we can do, I think that to support gender equality and diversity, as Allyson said, we have to make sure that women are represented in decision-making position. So we launched a year ago a 50-30 challenge for private enterprise and also the public sector. And it is an initiative that asks that organizations should aspire to gender parity when it comes to participation in their boards and senior management position, and also a significant representation of other underrepresented groups. We also see that women face unique and systemic barriers to start and make their business grow. So again, the last budget announced funding to provide women with greater access to financing, mentorship, and training under the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy. And I do believe that key to empower women is really to promote equality in many other aspects. I talked a little bit about caregiving, and we do believe that one way to empower women is to support child in the early days. So this is why the cornerstone of our commitment and investment in Canada is putting in place a wide program for early learning and childcare, recognizing that that will support women in their own career. So again, specific investment to benefit women and children.
2 minutes, sorry. I really appreciate to continue speaking, and we will. But let me sorry. Let me go straight away to Liv. Liv, I dare to put the question in another way. That should be: you have listened what Marta said and Nathalie said. We are speaking about something that is justice in a global way. The access to justice and the need to access to justice. But nevertheless, we must and we should act locally. And so in this case, and having your experience all over the world, what is going on, how we can assume in something that will be different, and something that Nathalie said, and Allyson and Marta, diversity, and at the same time, how we can empower women and girls in what should be the future for them. Can you share with us your experience, Liv?
Thank you. And thanks to Justice Portugal for putting this on the agenda, and the leadership on access to justice together with Canada, Netherlands, and others. I think this is a crucial time, and we know the challenges are enormous. We know the challenges are enormous, and we know that the gains in addressing them are also enormous. So if I may, I'll just go quickly through. I have a thing about making lists, so I've made a sort of brief list for myself as I'm sitting listening to the great panelists and keynote speaker Allyson before me. I think, yes, it's definitely important to extend legal protection. 2017, 1 billion women had no protection against sexual violence by intimate partners. 1.5 billion, no similar protection at their workplace. Extending legal protection and laws, changing laws is one factor which is crucial. The second is transforming the legal system and the justice system, moving institutions and mechanisms, tools and dialogue systems, platforms closer to people. Nathalie was one of those talking about affordability. It shouldn't have to cost loads of money for a woman in a rural area in a low-income country to travel to the capital to access her rights or the court system. We need to move the institutions closer to people. Point number 3, we definitely need better data. The data today shows us that the challenges are massive, and it shows us, the data shows us that we don't have good enough data. Yes, there is progress in some areas. Canada, Ireland, others are doing surveys. We need more countries to do them more regularly and break the data down by gender, so we actually see that what we are doing is having progress. Now, we need more women in the justice system. That's my next point. And I think that goes straight to your question, Anabela. We need more women leaders. It's important for leadership, role model functions, etc. And I've met several of these women leaders that are incredibly important. Shireen Ebadi, originally from Iran, Nobel Peace Laureate, activist and promoter of women's rights and access to justice. Thuli Madonsela, South Africa, previously public protector, now professor of law, spoke truth to power during the last government in South Africa, the previous government. You have several other examples. Ruth Bader Ginsburg here in the US, where I'm based, who came with a massive contribution to women's rights in the US. Nadia Murad, focusing on sexual violence in conflict, also a Nobel Peace Laureate, and there are numerous examples. They are important because they are role models and they're also changing the system. What more do we need? We need creative and innovative strategies. Marta, Allyson, Nathalie have talked about some of them, and we need more innovation in order to get access to justice closer to people. We need better organizing and giving support to civil society organizations and women's organizations on the ground that are actually channeling the information and needs that we need to hear and act on. We need stronger alliances like the one that Justice Portugal is pushing here, building bridges between civil society, governments, various governments, and keeping visibility on the issues. And then just to add a couple of last things. I know it's important to keep a focus on solutions and the good examples and the role models. And that is what is taking us forward and creating the changes. But we also need to be a bit more angry and a bit more impatient, because this is going too slowly, actually. So building bridges and organizing better and fighting harder, being a bit more impatient, I think is also important. And then one last thing. We are women leaders, and we need to keep two things in the back of our heads, I think, all the time. One is to keep the door open to assure that our contribution actually has a broader impact, that it has an impact on the ground. I try and ask myself regularly whether if what I am doing in conferences, in policy work, etc., will actually have an impact on that rural girl in a country on a different continent in order to improve conditions for her. So keeping an eye and a question all the time on, will this have an impact on the ground? And do I manage to open the door for others to come in and for things to change and us to redistribute the resources and lower the gap, I think is a good reminder to also have in the back of our heads. Thank you.
Thank you, Liv. Allyson, do you think that we need to be more angry and a little more impatient when we speak about these sort of things, about data, about what measures we should be doing for the near future?
I absolutely do. I think it is very, very important. And I also think that we should look, data right now is envisaged as something numeric that, we can put, analyze it and put it before decision makers. But the reality is that we want the decision makers to have the political will to act on behalf of people. So let's not box ourselves into numbers. What about people using social media? I'm tapping into this anger statement to tell their stories of successes and of failures, and using that information, that is information, their stories are information, to make a difference in terms of political will. We're speaking here to some of us, I'm a former politician and we have a politician, and whether you are, and Nathalie, I can tell you politicians respond to their constituents. Get the information to the constituents to empower them using social media, but also encourage and pressure politicians by getting that information back to them about what citizens need to cause them to act. The numbers we want to use to cause politicians to act, to put resources, time and money and others to make a change, but also stories and things on social media can also make a difference. So yes, get those stories out there and make sure that politicians feel, let me put it colloquially, the heat.
Absolutely. I think that we have now a topic that is call to action. I think that this is the last topic. And this is something that I would like to ask you all. I have something I heard in February, the speech of António Guterres, the Secretary General of United Nations, and he said something that is very important. The COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated entrenched discrimination against women and girls, as we were speaking about for now. And then he said something that I think that is very important, that is progress on gender equality has been set back years. And so my question for the three of you, Marta, four, this is very awkward to be here, to Marta, to Liv, Nathalie, and Allyson. Where do we go from here? And what is the future that we want and we need and we should achieve? So perhaps I will start from the beginning. Marta, what is your idea for the future?
Well, first of all, the pandemic is in fact aggravating so many of the situations. And for instance, for girls who have been able to be in the school system, with the closing of schools, many of them will have no chance to go back. And according to some studies, people think that this last year of closure of schools may take a whole decade to recover. So, of course, we need to join hands, as everyone is saying. But I think, so much has been said that when we think about women and girls, one of the most important challenges they face is the fact that they feel very insecure because they don't know what their rights are, what they can expect from the justice system. And having information in an accessible and very easy to understand form will help them feel empowered and to trust the system and to approach the system without fear of reprisals or any re-victimization. And particularly for young people, and I think Allyson was saying it, using the digital world, I think one of the most important things we can do is through this universe, which is accessible to most people, place the right information that young people, women and girls can use easily, so that they know that they can turn to an ombuds office, or they can turn to a legal aid office that exists in the country if they are afraid, if they have a problem, and they know that that mechanism is ready to support them. And the second thing I believe would be very important to do would be for all the girls and women who have been exposed to the justice system, including the judges in the Supreme Court and any other actor in the system, is to help in evaluating what is working best so that we document it and make it known, and what is not working so that we don't replicate it. These are very easy things that don't need to wait for the end of the pandemic, but they will make a big difference for all of us.
Absolutely, thank you. Nathalie, what is your opinion? What will be the future?
So thank you. I'll start with a couple of key words. So for me, it's leadership, maybe building on a little bit on what Liv said, being bold, sharing of information, sharing of best practices, and cooperation. So for me, those are really the team and the calls to action. I do believe that we have a little bit of a roadmap for the recovery when we look at the 2030 agenda. And as Allyson said, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals for me are indivisible. And we have to continue to see them as a whole and not only focusing on 16. When I say cooperation, it's because working together, we are stronger. And so I really support the work of Pathfinder, for example, and on other networks, and they are enablers, and we have to continue to participate in their forum and activities. Other area, we talked about it, focus on data. Allyson, you're right, data can make politicians to move, but they also take them in accountable. Because if we can measure our successes, we are accountable for the policies we are putting in place. For me, so data for me is another area where we need to focus. And finally, maybe just a wish. I would like to see the high-level working group land on some recommendations that really encourage us to look at how to better use, for example, technologies and other alternative measures to make justice more accessible for all. So those were my my final thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathalie. Liv, what are your last words?
Well, I think we need to step up. We need to be bold. We need to show leadership, demand leadership. We need to build alliances and support the grassroots organizations and civil society organizations on the ground. So building bridges and showing leadership, I think, are key words. And in all these bridges and settings and conferences, we need to keep on saying and repeating that the challenges are enormous, the gains are enormous by addressing the challenges, and we are running out of time. We've got little time because people out there are getting increasingly impatient and angry. Someone once said that war is just unsolved grievances and conflicts. We need to make sure that we address justice, disagreements and conflicts before it turns into difficult, bigger scale problems in the streets and out there. We are short of time and we need to step up. Absolutely.
Allyson, your last words.
Thank you. I'd like to endorse all that has been said and just add two things. I on a micro level and a macro level. My first one, the micro level. I'd like to point again to Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, U.S. Supreme Court, and then someone in a smaller country, like Trinidad, Justice Judith Jones, who both point to the need for training, judges have to understand not just the legislation and cases, but actually what actually impacts people that are in front of them. So training needs to involve people's experiences so that they can understand why this is so important to the person in front of them or the people in front of them. On the macro level, we're bringing resources to the table. I think we need to spend a lot of time on anti-corruption efforts. We want to make sure that there is no waste, that we stamp out corruption, that we build trust in our society, in our institutions, in our legal institutions, and that we eliminate the possibility of corroding our society because we know there's corruption. So let's deal with it and let's be very forthright and firm and bold about dealing with it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think if I may, to have a conclusion for this wonderful talk, and unfortunately we can't continue, I think that, as a matter of fact, it's not one, but three conclusions. The first one is we have to do much more about what we have now, we call the gap of data about gender and the impact of gender discriminatory legal frameworks and social norms when we speak about women and girls. Second is to go deeper in what we call about understanding in what works. I think that we were very inspired about the examples, the good examples, and horrified by what's going on in the world that we can't imagine, that we speak so much about technology and we continue to have this sort of discrimination, this sort of barbarian acts that we see all over the world. And yes, this is something that must stop, and we have to do something about that. And this is what we feel when we speak about commitment to state officials and civil society. And I think that in this way, innovation is the middle name of a new generation that we can call as the developers for a social good. And this is something that we can and we should emphasize. And third, this is the call to action. This call to action that the Secretary General of the United Nations said, and all of us are saying that, and like the Pathfinders and all the great women that I see surround me today, is that we should and we must reinform this commitment with governments, with civil society, and of course, all of us, citizens, not only of a country, of a continent, but as I said, of the world. And so I think that there is no better way. And if, ladies, are you with me? Yes? And so why not? Well, we can't hug. You know, this is something that in Portugal we do a lot. We kiss and we hug a lot. But unfortunately, we can't do that. And I will not dare to do that with Marta near me. So let's put our hands together and we will feel so connected and say, let's continue to do what is the best, that is a better world, a better environment, and especially no discrimination for women and girls. Thank you a lot for all of you. Thank you, and see you in the future. Bye-bye.
Well, it was, thank you very much for all of you. It was truly a very interesting debate. And I was thinking, it's incredible how we still need to hold these conversations. But that is also a reminder that justice is itself interconnected with ethics, policy making, cultural environment. Yesterday, we in Portugal celebrated the 47th anniversary of the Carnet Revolution that made the turn from dictatorship to democracy. It's been a winding road, of course, for the last 47 years, but until late 60s, in my country, this one, a woman wasn't allowed to travel abroad without the permission of her father or her husband. Right now, we understand that the justice system needs to be just, fair, inside the system itself also. We are closing this first day of the high-level conference for a people-centered eJustice. We will return tomorrow for some relevant debates and presentations on the European vision for eJustice, the use of technology and innovation to improve justice, cybersecurity, digital ethics, and digital identity. We will be waiting to welcome you again between 8:30 and 9 a.m. This is Lisbon time. The first panel starts at 9 a.m. If you want, you can stay on the platform and visit the virtual exhibition booths or enjoy a conversation with other participants in the networking area. When you leave, please remind the mask. I'm only saying this because I believe that doing so, we will remove them sometime soon. See you all tomorrow. Thank you.